Been telling you about a tiny house that sold for $200,000 in the Greater Toronto area. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, renovated, and it's tiny. And it went viral just days after listing. So we went out to Oshawa to see what it's like and to speak with a real estate agent who sold it, and at a fraction of the cost. Bear in mind, it's a fraction of the average home.
It is a tiny house. We've got 253 square feet here of renovated space that's perfect for somebody to live in.
Now, somebody obviously maybe 1, 2 people at the most. What about the interest in this? Because we've heard so much about the mortgage rules, the tightening of lending standards, and that's meant that a lot of people are being pushed lower down the price scale in markets around the Toronto area, including this one. For this to come on the market at the price that it did people automatically take notice and say, I could actually afford to live in that place?
Yes, it went crazy. We've gotten way more interest than I would have thought, for sure. It did just go viral. As soon as we hit Facebook and YouTube, we went on the market on a Wednesday, and it just snowballed from there and blew me away, and it's still continuing to amaze me at how much interest we're getting.
Now, in terms of the actual price itself, what did it sell for?
It sold for the list price, $200,000.
So $200,000. So someone got themselves a place for $200,000 in the Greater Toronto area. So that's no small feat. At the same time, I imagine opportunities like this are far and few in between.
Very far and few between. This is a complete anomaly. I mean, the owner has been asked to build more again, but it's just not financially feasible. This house was always standing. He bought it, renovated it, and then has resold it. So because the property was already here, he doesn't have the cost of land, services, and then to build, because that number would be way over $200,000 if you were to start from scratch.
I wanted to ask you about that because people think about opportunities, and everyone's thrown out all kinds of ideas of laneway homes and how can we get the price down. But from what I'm hearing from you, the fact this was already here was sort of the incentive to make it into a tiny home for somebody at that price. But to actually go out, buy a parcel of land, the GTA, try to recreate this, you just couldn't do it. The economics don't make sense.
They don't at all. I mean, you take a parcel of land like this, and we're going to be conservative and say maybe you could get it for $150,000, a vacant piece of land. Then you've got $57,000 in development charges just to get your sewers and your water and stuff here. Well, you're already over the price what somebody bought this for, and you haven't even built anything yet. So it's not economical for people unless we can get some government subsidy or funding on board to help create some more projects like this, because the demand is huge. So we'll see what happens.
When I think of tiny homes and all the attention that they get, but a tiny home in an urban setting, we know the land itself is expensive. I don't watch a lot of the home shows on TV, but every time I see a tiny home thing, it always seems to be a trailer parked in somebody's field, and the field is their friend, so it's for free. So as much as people get excited about it, it seems that in the long run, unless you have somewhere to squat, a tiny home is a tough sell.
Absolutely, for sure. And that's the difference here, is that we're not on wheels. This is not a movable home. You own the whole property. You're situated and you're a fixture here on the land. Whereas other tiny homes, it's just like living in a trailer on somebody's borrowed property. So.
Now, in this home right now, I'm actually sort of amazed because I don't feel constrained. I mean, obviously we're in a small space, but at the same time, I'm not crouching anywhere I go. And I have a home that's not a tiny home, but because it's a 100-year home, there are areas where I have to do this with my head. So it is impressive that there's even a sense of space in something this small.
Absolutely there is, and that was the appeal for a lot of buyers, is that you have lots of space, it's bright, it's fresh, it's airy, you're not sacrificing anything to live here, you just have smaller space, and it's affordable.
Now, overall in the market, talking about affordability, it seems that now that the market has cooled off substantially, that actually a little bit of affordability is creeping back in. What do you find when you're working with clients in terms of what they're looking for and what price point they've been pushed to because of all the new rules?
They're just probably pushed to a little bit of a lower price point. So, maybe a couple of years ago that buyer could afford a detached house, and they may now be looking at a semi-detached property. So with those rules that have come in place, it has really spurred anything under $500,000. That first-time home buyer product. And so it's done wonders for that segment of the market, which is why when something $200,000 comes up, you just don't hear about it. There's nothing in this area that would be priced at this property. So it created a lot of interest because there is now an ability for somebody at that low end of the buying spectrum to be able to get into the market and create some equity.
So now that this house is off the market, and obviously people are looking for a cheaper price point, what can they realistically hope for? We always hear about the dream of what people want, and then they run the numbers, and there's the reality of what they can get.
That's right. In here in Oshawa, Durham region, I mean, if you had a $350,000 budget, I could get you into something quite comfortably. I mean, it would be bigger than this, but definitely your step into the market for sure. That's where you're going to be sitting as far as entry level detached or single family homes go. Condos, a little bit cheaper than that.
Now, after the cool down that we saw, do you feel that buyers and sellers are starting to meet at a more realistic place in the middle? Because I think at first when the market started adjusting, I would even notice in my own neighborhood that people were stubborn in terms of selling and saying, I'm still going to get $1.5 million for this house, and the game had changed. Do you find that everyone's sort of starting to meet more in the middle now?
Yes, absolutely, and it's a much better feeling selling real estate, because now, you know, we've got two parties that are kind of going to meet in the middle and both feel good at the end of the transaction, whereas before somebody was always left feeling awful after the transaction when it was peaking, right? Because buyers going into a property, sellers are getting everything they want, and buyers are bending over backwards just to get a roof over their head. So it doesn't feel good at the end of the day. And I mean, in a sales transaction, everybody wants to sort of feel good about the process.
Now, to take it back finally to the end of the tiny home, and we've been talking about here, what's the thing that most impressed you about this space? I mean, you've seen all kinds of homes. You've been selling homes for well over a decade. What's the most impressive thing about this?
Just how well and comfortable it feels in here. The space is great. I love the natural light, and how nothing is sacrificed. You have appliances, you have a washing machine, you have a full bathroom here. It just really feels good in here, and it's the perfect space for somebody to come in and enter into the market, because in this price range, let's say the $300,000 to $350,000 price range, there's a lot of sacrifices you may have to get in order to get into that. Here, you don't have to sacrifice anything.